In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 things that have saved my chipping and hopefully are going to help you chip better. Guys, before we do get stuck into the video, if you want me to become your free golf coach, just hit that subscribe button down there. Then you can tell your mates that Matt Fryer is your golf coach and he helped you beat them. Let's get stuck into the video. So, like a lot of you, I would imagine you've come across times where you've had chipping problems and everything that you do is negative. When you stood over the golf ball, you're thinking about don't thin it through the green, don't fat it in front of the green. You're thinking about how much divot you don't want to take, how much of the ball you don't want to top and thin, and nothing you do is actually riddled with positivity. Now, the first thing that I wanted to do to change my chipping and actually save my chipping was think a little bit more about that impact, because like you watching at home, I was standing over chips and had all those negative thoughts gunning through my head. But then it sprang to me one day when I was watching the golf not so long ago. Every time I watch the pros, one of the things that they do before they have a practice swing, it's not technical, all they think, and it's probably a buzzword that we've heard about now, is turf interaction. So when I'm stood out chipping, I'm thinking, when I was chipping poorly, I was concerned so much about impact and how poorly I was going to impact, instead of thinking, well, as I take some practice swings now, how does the club actually feel when it's hitting the ground? Because when I'm on tight turf like this versus a slightly little bit more fluffier rough versus a little bit of a thicker rough, it feels different each time. And what I wanted to do as I was starting to do some chipping practice was actually just get used to the different feels again. So when I was on thicker ground, I wanted to use my leading edge a little bit more. And as I progressively got back towards my fairway, I wanted to be feeling that I actually just felt like I brushed it again a little bit more. So then I was thinking a little bit more positively about how the club was actually going to touch the ground. Because like I say, hit that like button as well if this is you. As you stand over a chip normally, you're thinking about how it's negatively going to impact the ground. You're not thinking about, well, is it a brush? Do I need to dig it a little bit more? And that was the first thing that helped me chip a little bit better. So I'm going to go to that back one, and I now know when I have my practice swings, I want to feel on the shallower ground here, I brush it a little bit more. So I take my good setup, I get here and I brush it. And there, a nice little chip off. And if you just come in close for me here, you can see how small of a divot I've actually taken, because I was aware that I wanted to just brush that ground a little bit more. I didn't want to feel like I was digging it or doing anything along those negative lines. So tip number 1 that's helped me save my chipping: think about how you want the blade to rub along the ground. Do you need to dig it a bit more out of thicker grass, or do you want to try and brush it a bit more on thinner grass? The second thing that has helped save my chipping, and again, this goes back to that process. When we're in that negative mind frame, when we're in a little bit of funk with our chipping, we're not picturing good shots. We're not seeing anything positive happen when we do chip. But now the second thing that I do, when I now get to my chips, I know how I want my club to interact with that turf. Second thing, how do I want the ball to fly? Real simple. Do I want it to fly high? Do I want it to fly medium? Or do I want it to fly low? Because here, round the green, I've got 3 different flags. And what I could have is 3 different flights here. At the back, I probably want the ball to fly a little bit lower because I've got a little bit more ground to cover. The one here on the left, I'm in between, so I probably want my middle flight. Then the one on the right-hand side, I've only got a little bit of ground, so I want my high flight to land it softly on the green and get it stopping softly. And the way I do this, real simple, if I've got my 56 degree out that I'm chipping with, if I'm playing my low flight, I play the ball off the back of my foot. So it entails a little bit more shaft lean, that ball being off the back and then getting that weight forwards. If I'm playing my mid flight, I see that I get a tiny bit of shaft lean and I see the ball out of the middle of my stance. And if I want my high one, I see a pretty neutral shaft and I see the ball now placed on the inside of my front foot. So simply by clarifying how I want that ball to fly, whether it be high, medium or low, I put the ball in the appropriate position in my stance, think about my turf interaction. Let's go for a little bit of a lower one here towards the back, and I now know I can get my chipping going again and seeing I get the desired flight I want from there. Guys, as I said earlier, if you want me to be your free golf coach, remember, subscribe down below. Totally free to do, and I'll give you loads of free tips. I'll even give you tech info that's going to help you make better choices and spend your money more wisely. Let's have a look at the third and final thing that saved my chipping. So the third and final thing that has saved my chipping, you can use a towel, you can use whatever you want, but that is focusing in and getting laser focus on where you want to land it. So if I was playing from that golf ball there up towards this one, I now know how I want to brush the ground. I now know that I would want my higher flight, so I need to land it somewhere around that towel. So when I now get out on the golf course and I tie this up nicely in my actual routine, I think about, right, well, in my practice stroke, I'm finding out how the ground feels. Then I'm going to ask the question of how do I want the ball to fly? And thirdly, where do I want it to land? I can tie them all together. I can have a few practice swings, imagining the ball in the right spot in my stance. I then come behind it, and from here, I now know I want a higher flight, so I've got that ball further forwards. I now know I want to land it near my towel. I just pulled it slightly, but you know what? It landed pretty close, and I've only got a 6-foot putt now, all because I'm tying those three things together. So really, not very much technical stuff in there. A little bit about your ball position, but what you can do is start to get positive with those chips by asking those three questions. How do you want the blade to interact? How do you want the flight to be? Where do you need to land it? Think about that when you're out on the golf course, and as soon as you start to do those, you're not stood over it second guessing. You've answered your three questions, and that is going to save your chipping. Guys, thanks for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe, and I'll see you in your next video very soon.